to me the far more amusing and interesting topic of Sasquatch. Um, First off, Jim, Sasquatch, real, fake?
I think the jury's out. I really think the jury's out. If we're talking about hunting down, like in my opinion, hunting down the actual being, um, I think the jury's out. I think the biggest thing to discredit is nobody has a good argument against it. The things that, if you watch some of these things, you have these scientists because it's kind of crypto science. You're talking about some creature that nobody's seen, but there's a lot of stories out there, and a lot of stories kind of make a lot of sense. I was watched a show one time, and it was talking this. It was, I don't know what native tribe it was, but they're kind of like maybe like Cheyenne. They were like up in the Montana area, somewhere up there north. Big sky country. And when the white man came over, they used to have communal relations with these Bigfoot people, and there's stories in their culture about having this relationship, and they warned them that they should not meet and welcome these foreigners from this other land, and that if they were to start intermingling with them, that they would separate their ties from them and then just go away and not lose that relationship. Well, apparently that's what had occurred, and that's why the tribes don't have anything else, I guess, to do with them, because those people moved. Of course, this is some old tribe that I saw on a TV show. This old Indian guy was talking about, this is a story from our tribe. I don't know which one it is, but it was quite compelling that I was thinking on the way over here, and one of the things I think about is, like, we talk about our oceans, and we talk about what we don't know, what we don't see, where we don't have eyes or cameras poking at. These areas where, like, these high Sasquatch or Bigfoot, when I'm thinking like British Columbia type region, it's so remote. No one goes out there. Who's to say it couldn't live out there?
Well, me. But uh, let me ask, the first thing you said really bothers me, that you said that there is no evidence that Bigfoot doesn't exist. I can't prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist. I can't prove a null. You can't prove that Bigfoot does. There is zero evidence. There is zero fossil record. You know, and especially, and I think, if you're talking about 100 years ago, you're right. I mean, there were no video cameras. There was no internet. The communication didn't move at the speed of light. Um, and and then you fast forward to the last 20 years, where you've got all these people going to all these places, looking specifically for a Sasquatch, and nobody has ever found them. The other thing that I think about is, when you just think about it biologically, in order for a species, and once again, we're not talking about the deep ocean or somewhere where we haven't explored, where we don't even know what's down there, but on terra firma, we know a little bit about biology and about species, to have the sort of numbers that it would require for a Sasquatch to continue to exist. There's no way they could be hidden. It would take, I mean, you can't have four. You know what I mean? There's got to be a large enough numbers that it is sustainable, that the species could continue to go on. And there's just no way they haven't been seen. I don't get it. I know a lot of people believe in it. And you tell me, because I know this is something that you actually have looked into, definitely a lot more than me, not that you're, sitting around looking for Bigfoot on the weekends or anything, but you've studied it more than I have. What, other than, whenever I think of Bigfoot and the people that believe it, what all I know of that they're basing it on are the stupid images, that weird, videotape of this
Patterson Gimlin
yeah
film.
of
Yeah,
this
yeah.
shady figure walking through the forest. That's all I know. Is there anything more substantial that people are basing this belief on?
Yeah, and the biggest thing about it is, come on. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, everybody has their Sasquatch story and their opinion about it. Oh, it's not real. But I mean, to the point to where even if we did take it serious, and there are scientists that have staked their careers just to go find this evidence, and from their findings, they have found evidence, but nobody believes them because, like, dude, you're crazy. And one of the ones I was watching on one of these Bigfoot shows, it was a guy who had done all the castings of footprints,
Mm,
and one of the things that I think thought was compelling was extreme remote areas where these things are found.
yeah.
Extreme remote, like nobody goes out there. So someone to pull this hoax and it to be freshly done, and they not know that something just walked that way. It's kind of compelling. I think one of the coolest ones I heard. But this, believe it if you don't. The guy's just presenting the information. You can do with it what you want.
Right. Well,
And
no,
but
and that's what I'm asking. I mean, I'm not. That's literally what I'm asking because
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to know more about it. I want to know that I I absolutely believed that there was a lot more that people were basing this belief on. I
Hmm.
just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So no, I'm listening. I hear you.
Yeah, so there's the foot impressions are some of the ones that to where it's unknown, and then also having there's been hair samples found that of certain species would believe be Sasquatch that they don't find in the DNA record of creatures as an unknown hair sample. Um, and then also the foot impressions too. They actually look like feet impressions from human and other creatures. They have the right crinkles where they should, and I guess you can say how it forms into it and how it smushes. It looks more like someone put their foot down, and I mean their foot is like the Bigfoot's foot down, like something was walking, as opposed to someone making an impression with a stamp. And I think when the one was talking about he was in a remote area and it had just snowed, and he came to this like kind of like a deer trail that was running through the woods, and he saw what looked like a large set of footprints, a small set of footprints, and then like a medium set of footprints, like mom, dad, and baby Sasquatch that were walking down this trail. And those footprints may have been like 30 minutes ago because they were very, very fresh and it was still lightly snowing. And he's like, if you look at these footprints, that's quite compelling. He's like, I'm in a remote area. There's nobody, the likelihood that there's three people out here causing this hoax and all the footprints kind of look like something's walking. It's kind of an odd thing
So
to make up.
and when you're talking about the not in that instance where you're talking about footprints in snow, but when you're talking about like prints that have been that went into mud and hardened, like prehistoric footprints, things like that, and an unknown DNA sample or strand. Like I totally get that. I totally accept that there could have been a species of great ape or something that is long extinct that hasn't been identified. Like I got no problem with that. 30 minutes ago, a family of Sasquatch, I got a little bit of a problem with, but I guess so. What is the thought for the supporters of the theory? What what are they? Do they think it's just this species of super intelligent ape that is intentionally evading being found?
Yeah, I can't speak for those people because that those Finding Bigfoot shows. I mean, I've hunted, and I've all, and also, had time in the military. Everything they're doing, nothing would come near them. They're stomping through the woods at night, and if anybody knows anything about nighttime, you can have it's extremely hard to move quietly through the woods at night, especially during winter with leaves and such. You can hear anybody fumbling and bumbling around in the dark. Even if these creatures are able to see in the dark, these people out there with cameras, they're howling and all that stuff, and I don't
So
know
so maybe
what
so
they're thinking.
maybe not super intelligent, maybe super aware and defensive,
Yes.
like a you know they're fleeing because they can spot us way before we can spot them.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely say that that's more like that, and I think they keep their distance. But I just, if they do exist, I don't think they're intimidated by us, especially because it's not like they're out there with guns. And that's a whole nother story. I'm sure, if Bigfoot is real, then, hey, they're aware of, boomsticks, right? But it's just very interesting to think that people actually go out there and try and find them. And I think the way that it was, if to do a show like that, you should take the approach of a hunter and tracking an animal. And I think you would have to take a weapon for defense if you're going to do it. I mean, I think maybe that's the only way you can try and get evidence. I mean, I've always felt you can't prove it till you have a dead body laying on the ground and we can examine it and say, yes, this is a Sasquatch. That's what everybody would need to believe it, because it's just still, we don't, I mean, like you said, I don't go out and find Bigfoot samples. You don't see me going to British Columbia to go hunt Bigfoot. I mean, I just watch what other people have done and just kind of think, yeah, maybe that's possible. Maybe it is. Listen to what they say, because this guy is totally convinced and he's, expert in this stuff. And I'm like, footprint analysis, stuff like that. I'm like, okay, maybe you are, maybe you're not. But I mean, if it is real, it's quite compelling. And to imagine there's a species, a large ape species or something like that, that is still alive that we haven't had communication with, it's not too far fetched either because we still don't really know a whole lot of the creatures that live in our oceans.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, uh, Les Stroud. I don't know. Did you ever watch Survivor Man? You're
Yeah,
familiar with that show?
is it still on?
No, it's not still on. He does. He still does. He still does the Survivor Man thing. He does videos on YouTube, but the TV show isn't on anymore. But it's a guy I really liked. I love that show. Survivor Man was a great show, and he is a big Bigfoot believer. And so he did several, um, like 2 and 3 part specials about finding Bigfoot or what, whatever. He did a few of them, and because it's somebody that I respect and I really enjoy, I watched them, because it was somebody, you know, that I knew was a sane and rational person that knew how to move around in the forest. He knew how to move around. He knew how to look for signs of things, things like that. So I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And he went around with people, from the area, searching for Bigfoot. And even with him doing a special on it, on TV, and there was just never anything compelling. I've just never seen anything compelling that would tell me that this is an actual, like I said, it probably, there could have been a great ape that we've never identified that roamed around however many, hundreds of years ago. I just, I just don't, there's no way we haven't seen it. I just don't buy it. I can't. I
And,
can't.
and that's what I mean when you're talking about Survivor, man, and even like in Alaska. I mean, I can't express to you what I mean by the term remote, because I've been in remote places in overseas where we're no radio contact to anybody. We're that remote. Even for the military, we did not have the technology with us that could reach the distances we were from our other the closest unit to us. I think we had our satellite trackers could tell you where we were at, but we couldn't talk to nobody. And at that time, the messaging system in our truck wasn't working very well. So, but when it comes to those type of remote areas, uh, they scare the crap out of me basically, because if you think about it, it's so remote, like nobody can come and get you. You are that far away from anything. If you don't have the skill set to forage or hunt or fish to survive, provide shelter, like Survivor Man, you will die out there very quick. I mean, water is like one of the biggest things, is trying to find a fresh water source. But also you think food, if you have a special diet. You can't be out in those remote places, and you literally are part of nature at that point. You are part of the ecosystem. Anything could eat you. You're susceptible to all the elements because you have no protection and no one there to be with you. That's the type of place, and I mean, days away from any help. This is the type of things I'm talking about. We don't know that people don't go there. People
Yeah.
don't go there and just explore.
Well, I'll say that, and that's why I love having these conversations, because it makes me think. And like I said, I don't want to just. I'm not just a cynic for cynicism's sake. That's not me. As you're talking, I start thinking, and I'm like, well, here's the deal. I do realize, I do accept. There are places that are so remote. Like you look, you talk about like the rainforest. It's kind of like the ocean. A tiny percentage of the rainforest has been explored. And then they go and explore and they find entire civilizations, you know, 200, foot tall pyramids and things like that hidden within that rainforest that nobody ever saw for hundreds of years. Um, so I accept that. That there are places that are that remote that it is still possible there you will find places no human being has ever walked on, you know. But then and as we're sitting there talking, it made me start thinking. I wonder if I've got a size bias. Because if you sat here and you told me there's a caterpillar that lives in a remote part of Nova Scotia that nobody has ever seen, I would say, okay. Like I would just, sure, why not? There's parts of Nova Scotia that nobody's ever been to. And even if they have, maybe they didn't come across this caterpillar. I would say that's very plausible to me. So why is it that much more implausible just because what we're talking about is, supposed to be 7, 8 feet tall? So maybe I got a size bias that's making me more of a cynic than perhaps I should be, because if I can accept that there's a species of snake in the Amazon that nobody's ever identified, is it that much crazier to think that there's a great ape out there that nobody's? I mean, you're making me. You're stop,
Well,
stop making me question it.
well, the other thing too is, there's been so many stories for years from sailors and fishermen about the giant squid, but it isn't until recently that they actually have visual evidence on camera recording. They were baiting a squid, and it came in, and they have a video. So that's the biggest thing. People see them, never seen them alive. They've seen them wash up on the shore. So they exist. But getting that visual evidence of actually seeing it move, knowing it's not a hoax or anything, that everybody got to see the video and said that is a giant squid. Look, they do exist.
Yeah,
So I mean,
and
and I
they're
know the
and they're absolutely massive.
yeah, the eyes, like, yeah, it's like a foot around. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't know, but it's very large and intimidating. I couldn't imagine swimming there. Even some of the jellyfish that they found are just huge. There's so many, but of course, our largest species in the world can only be in the oceans because of the fact that water supports their weight. But like terrestrial beings, that would be like an apex type predator, an ape species, and apes don't have very large numbers, and I would imagine this species would be too. That's why they're not just have some population boom. It's more survival. They know how to live within their means, and they're not looking to expand, maybe their numbers for survivability purposes. Because if they got too big, maybe they starve. So I mean, and I'm saying that's why we just don't see them. Encroachment upon land is why we see like snakes and alligators in Florida homes, or deer running through neighborhoods. All these animals get their environments get encroached on, but no one's moving into these remote areas for one reason: there's nothing out there. We haven't pushed out there to where someone building a home out there being survivable and sustainable is for very few people that could do that, and they're probably on those, survival shows anyway, because it's pretty extreme to be out there like that all alone.
Well, I will say I will absolutely not believe in Sasquatch until somebody does bring one down and load it in their truck and bring it to me. I'm not going to believe it. But sitting here having this conversation, which is without a doubt the longest conversation I have ever had about Bigfoot, I can see where people get pulled in, because once you start to question it, once you start to think about it, you can see the plausibility in it. So I definitely have a greater understanding for the people that do believe it, because they're sitting there having these conversations all the time, and they're digging, which I'm sure they're, selecting the stories and the articles and the things that support their theories like we all do. Um, so it just pulls them in even deeper. I definitely get it, but like I said, it just doesn't make it just. I mean, you just and once again, I mean, it goes back to the freaking size of it. Something that large to sustain the numbers necessary to perpetuate the species. I just don't know how we've never seen one. I just can't. I can't.
Yeah, and I like I said, like even with that old Indian man saying that, they just avoid us, and that's why they're in the remote areas because they know we're not going there. And if we come close, they know we are, and they get out of the way. I mean, I just think of it as survival. They've had, for whatever reason, they've decided to try to remove our contact with them, and every once in a while they get caught on camera. I was talking to my wife one time about this, and we talked about it. Be like, why don't these people go out there and like hunt it? Like if I was going to go hunting, like hunting a Bigfoot, so I could have the evidence, I would hunt it from the hunting perspective. You talk about what the Survivor Man, his shows, those people that go and hunt, they know what a bear looks like when it beds down, or a deer, or this or that, or what this type of poop is, or what this scrape is, or where this water source is, or what food these organisms that eat. So they have an understanding of all these creatures that live in the regions that they're at. And when they find something that they can't explain, that's where the Bigfoot thing pops in there, because this is larger than something that I know. So that's why I'm saying that's where they come up with this idea. Maybe you don't understand, but it's like they know so much about the creatures that live in that environment that this is totally unusual and does not make sense why it is here. But also, I told the conversation with my wife was about also saying, if I was out hunting this thing and I actually saw it, I honestly, if I was to pick my rifle up and put a bead on it, I don't know if I could. For one reason, I've never seen anything like this before. How, I mean, it would probably take my breath away if it was real. And I honestly, it would just, even being able to hunt her and, putting a rifle up to kill something is not a problem for me. But if you saw something you weren't, you don't really know what you're looking for, you kind of think something hairy, but I don't know if anyone could not be in such awe that they actually took a shot.
Well, see, and I think that goes back, and I think it's a perfect segue into the alien debate as well. Is I think what you just said perfectly encapsulates both theories. Is here's this thing I don't understand, I can't explain, so let me attribute it to this. I think that's the exact same thing they're doing with the aliens and everything. Here's this thing that, hey, here's my son Jonah. Say hi, Jonah. Um, I can't explain it, so I'm going to make it this. And just like with the aliens, I think that there's got to be more. You've got to do better than I don't know what it is, so it's going to be this. You know, um, you see some weird track. Okay, that the fact that you don't think that it could belong to any bear species that you've ever seen, that don't mean it's a Sasquatch. You see an image of a, like you said, maybe a drone, maybe or who knows what, um but it flies in a way you've never seen. It's got to be an alien. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It could be any number of things, you know. So I think that's a perfect segue into the two. And maybe I'm more of a cynic than I realized, because my gut reaction is always to dismiss it. And that's probably not a very good mindset. There probably needs to be somewhere in the middle. And I think you probably land a little more somewhere in the middle, which is probably a better place to be. You know, that's one of the reasons I want to have talks like this, is so that maybe I can see some of my blind spots. I don't think I have one with Sasquatch, but it's definitely, it's interesting, and the points you make are valid. Like I said, not like you're a huge Sasquatch guy, but you know, playing the devil's advocate in that conversation, there's merit to it. There's merit to some of those things, um, but just the basic fundamentals of what's required to sustain life. You think about with the size they say these Sasquatch are. Think about how, and you're talking about maybe a family, which no animal, I don't know about that, but even if you did, if you had three of them, how much food would they eat in a day? Like, they wouldn't be able to just have a small cave that they live. They would have to cover incredible distances just to eat, right? I mean, am I crazy?
Well, you can't think of these creatures because when you're talking, I just think of all the biological things that go on the cycling of matter and how things go. Is that apex predators can have low numbers. Once they get high numbers, they start to die off. And usually, if I'm to imagine this type of species, I believe it's kind of would do like we would, like some of the Indian tribes, they would follow the herds of buffalo around throughout the year to where they could sustain their meat. They maybe fall into caribou and elk that live in these very remote areas where there's a very high sustainable food source that is not being harvested by man, where these creatures could live. So I believe that's why I tell you that I'm not people would say just because I think that Bigfoot is plausible. It is plausible for there to be a species like that, as there are large apes, for another ape species to have that intelligence to be able to hunt and follow and maintain its numbers, intentional numbers, or maybe they don't have. Maybe each Sasquatch has one child. Who we don't know how many babies they could have in their lifetime. We know how many. So there's just a lot out there that could possibly support that life, and it's just because we're not there. Just like there's so many things in the ocean that could support life too, just like those thermonuclear events could do that. We didn't know about that. And so the size I don't have an
Well,
issue with, or the food source is not an issue at all with
I
that.
will say, and I think I do think the ocean thing. I see what you're saying, but I think it's kind of a, I think it's kind of an unfair comparison because what we're talking about in the ocean are depths where light can't reach, right? I mean, we're not talking about they're swimming around in the ocean, 30 feet down, and we just hadn't spotted them. They're at depths so deep, light can't even reach. And the only reason we ever found them is because they happened to die and come up to the surface. So I mean, I don't know that that's really a fair comparison to make because what we're talking about with Bigfoot is a creature that does live on Earth in light. I just don't think that's really fair.
Yeah. Well, and I just can't get back to this remoteness. I mean, there's so much of Alaska, so much of Canada that is just so remote, and I just like you said, even the rainforest, it's so remote, it's so dense. There's places that people have been and haven't been for a very very long time, and that's why I just really think that they found out where they could survive. If they're plausible, there's intentionality in their avoidance of us, and their numbers are kept small for some intentional reason to where they're not observable because that's it. Science is all about observation. We come back to what we see, so we try to tie it to something, but that's where that scientific mind comes in. It's like, well, what am I seeing? Can I explain that? What am I observing, and can I explain it? That's where the questioning mind comes into, as opposed to just like, I don't know what it is, so I'm not worried about it. And that's where my mind comes in about the whole Sasquatch conversation, is like understanding how these ecosystems work and the ecology that an apex predator plays in a role in its ecosystem. It could survive and it could avoid us totally, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I don't buy it. I don't know how something that large. I just I don't know. I mean, you're right. There are remote areas of the world. There are incredibly remote.
Extremely remote areas we've never been.
Yeah, I agree. I don't believe Sasquatch is walking around.
You don't have to, and I mean it's like I said, it's just like my scientific mind is like, yes, it is plausible that that could be a thing. Do we have physical evidence? Do we have a corpse? Not that anyone's aware of, and and I think that's what everybody needs. Everybody needs the evidence to believe it. I mean, you know, I guess we're crazy because we believe in Christ, right?
Uh,
We haven't seen that guy, have we? Like,
that's
I
I
mean,
mean that is a very fair point. And I do wonder. I question. Once again, yeah, that's where, and I hope you guys that are watching this are enjoying this, and I hope that you take something from it because I really want to continue these conversations because I think that's where having talks like this and talking about things that I wouldn't normally talk about, exploring concepts that I wouldn't normally explore because it's not part of paying my mortgage, um, are so compelling to me because I also think this this video footage of the spacecraft and stuff that are doing weird things, and belief in UFOs is it's more believed now than it has probably ever been. I mean, people, even the government is saying it. Like, there's more belief in UFOs now than there's ever been, and my lack of belief hasn't changed a bit. And so I wonder if I saw an alien, like if they if they found a ship and it crashed and they pulled the alien out and it was on TV, would I believe it? If they killed Sasquatch or they found let's say they, because I agree. I think if Sasquatch is real, they're so good at hiding. We're probably never going to hunt one because they must be incredibly good at it. But maybe they just found one that died of natural causes or whatever, and brought it to my front yard. I'd probably still not believe it, and that ain't good. That tells me that I need to open up. I need to open up to the possibility of something being of the plausible, a little more, because until I can tell myself if you brought it and showed it to me, well, then I would believe it. I'm not as open minded as I need to be.
Well, if at any given time that I happen to find an alien and I throw it in the back of my truck and I
Don't
bring
bring
it
it
over
here.
here to you,
Don't bring it
bro,
here.
I know for sure that I'm bringing it to you. You're the first person to prove. But I mean, because I just have to have somebody who's not going to believe my crazy story with me. Because
Yeah.
if I told them that I took it to my brother and took it over to Jace's house and at Jace's house I showed him the alien we found. I mean, we were both crazy.
I'd be saying, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. I didn't
I
see
got
it.
the pictures
We got the selfies with the alien.
with the alien.
Oh my gosh. All right, guys. Well, I guess that'll do it for this episode. But I've really enjoyed it. Jim, I hope you've enjoyed it too. You guys let us know what you think. Throw something there in the comments. Like I said, if you have anything else you want to talk about, if you have any other topics, or if you have insight into these topics that you want to bring up and you want us to readdress, we'll be happy to do it. Thank you all so much for watching. God bless. Jimmy, got anything for him?
Not at all. See you next time, guys.